This message is for somebody who has recently gone through a lot of lessons in one department of their life, and they are now manifesting or stepping into a new era of their life where they can finally stop learning lessons, okay? And I have like some major backstory on this message before I get into it. So, this morning, I woke up from a dream and I was doing a reading for somebody in this room, in my house, with this deck. And I don't remember what cards I pulled, but I remember saying to them, I said, this thing that you're receiving, like this isn't a lesson to be learned. This is something that you can just take and enjoy. You don't have to go through this big like life-changing experience, because those are great, learning lessons and going through experiences like that are absolutely great and they contribute to our lives so much. But sometimes, I don't know if anybody else experiences this, but sometimes I'm like, oh my god, when is it gonna stop? Because like, when do I get one thing that doesn't have to be a lesson? You know what I mean? When do I get one thing that can just be? And I feel like I'm finally stepping into a time of my life where I am receiving stuff like that. And I also feel like this collective is as well. Now, the interesting thing is, and this is so crazy because in my dream last night, pretty much the way that it looks outside, it looked exactly like it did in the dream. It was raining outside, it was all mucky, but the weirdest thing was, I remember looking out this window and seeing two squirrels fighting in my yard. And I woke up this morning, came out here, sat down, got everything ready. What do I see? Two squirrels fighting. You can't make that up. You can't make that. That was crazy. I was like, oh my god. I was like, that's weird. That's weird. Anyway, squirrels do represent poverty mindset. If we think of squirrels, they represent lack mindset because they are constantly taking things and storing them away, assuming that they will not have enough when hardships come, right? So I think the act of the squirrels fighting is kind of showing like an end to this dynamic. We don't have to wrestle with this anymore. We don't have to fight with this dynamic anymore. But let's get into the cards. All right, what does this collective need to hear in regards to this message? How can we expand on this message? Got it before I dropped it. Okay, we have the Page of Wands here. So the Page of Wands is a very interesting card because when we think of the suit of wands, it is the suit of fire, which represents intense, quick actions, action taking. But when it's the page is always slightly more reserved than something like the king, the queen, or the knight, as the page still hasn't stepped into the role that it will step into. The page is the learner, the page is youthful. So the Page of Wands, how I usually interpret it, is somebody that is not quite sure where they want to go yet, but once they fully figure that out, you're in the planning stage, right? Most pages are planning stages. But once you figure that out, you're going to experience changes in your life very, very quickly. And like, even just looking at this, like, there's a woman and she's like staring out at this vast landscape, but it almost looks like a desert, right? It's a desert. She doesn't quite know what she's going to create with this blank canvas of a desert. What kind of garden is she going to grow? Especially being called back to the Four of Wands, which in my one deck, it's not this deck, is a garden that's being grown. So I think that's interesting. And the Four of Wands is typically considered like a very, very happy card, representative of weddings, home, creating a home life. So just keep that in mind, like this might be planning a family, planning a home, planning a future, planning a wedding. But the key point is that we need to do that planning, right? We need to figure things out. We need to get clear on the path forward here. Yeah, and then we have the Queen of Cups here, which I love the Queen of Cups in this deck. I think it's so like Aphrodite-esque. But the Queen of Cups is a very beautiful card. It can often represent self-care. I often think of the Queen of Cups card as the mother card, and do what you would do to a child to yourself, you know. So the way that you would care for a child, care for yourself. That is the energy of this card. And especially though being paired with what I was saying before, I think this definitely could be a very new start for you emotionally. I think if you've gone through periods of your life where you had like very like too much I can't say that word. You know what, never mind. If you've had very like intense emotional periods, think of like tower moments, death moments. This is definitely a period of time where you're going to be stepping into a softer emotional period. I think of the Queen of Cups as very much as like soft, like flowing emotions that flow, but they do not like flood, you know. They flow, they don't flood. Temperance energy there as well. Okay, so I just dropped a bunch of cards, and this one fell out before I dropped the other like bunch of cards, and then when I went to pick them up, these two were stuck on the ground. And so I'm gonna read this before I read the Ace of Cups. How I interpreted this, we have the Six of Swords and the Sun card here, and what I got when these two cards were stuck on the ground, usually when cards stick to things, I interpret that as an energy that we are blocking ourselves from, right? I had a very, very hard time picking these up, right? So this is an energy that you might be going through a transition phase, in the sense that you are now ending one era of your life and transitioning into this energy. You're unsticking yourself. So we have the Six of Swords and the Sun card. So the Six of Swords card is always my transition card. It's always my moving on card. It can be physically, but because the Swords is a mental suit, it's air, it's intellectual, I typically interpret this as a change of mindset, but it also can represent a literal change of place. And with the Sun card, you could literally be moving somewhere more sunny, but the Sun card is pure joy, okay? When we think of Sun energy, Sun is also masculine, right? It's an ability to accept things as they come, in the sense that I am not going to, you know, take something and try to find a hidden meaning under it, something like the Moon or the High Priestess energy. You know, High Priestess energy and the Moon, those are both feminine energies, right? And they represent the unseen, they represent the secretive, they represent the intuitive, right? The intuition to uncover the secrets. Whereas the Sun card is very much like, I'm going to take things as they are. I'm going to take things the way that it appears to me and the way that the universe presents them to me. And I am not going to look for some sort of hidden negative energy, right? Especially like that's like a very heavy like trauma response, right? Is like trying to find bad where there is none, right? So that might be an energy or a mindset, you know, that we would benefit from adopting here in this collective, stepping into an energy of taking things at face value. And taking things at face value does not make you, you know, like any more unintelligent or weak. Sometimes we need to do that, and we need to let people reveal themselves as they are without placing them into boxes, right? And this can definitely apply to like things outside of people as well. I know in my personal life, I really like to self-sabotage projects and stuff. And like I tell myself like, oh, it's actually not going to work out in the way that I want it to, you know, and that like I try to like intuitively predict a future that doesn't actually exist yet. And it honestly, it's not intuition, it is fear, right? And that can also be what the Moon card represents, right? It can represent fear and illusions and not seeing things clearly. And this squirrel is back. The squirrel is on the roof of my shed outside. Again, that lack mindset, right? Like, why are we storing nuts for winter? We don't even live in a cold climate. Okay, I do, you know, I live in a cold climate. But, you know, like with the Sun card, it's like, why are we preparing for the winter when the winter is never going to come? Don't try to dim your light, dim your flame, you know, drawing to the Page of Swords at the beginning. Do not try to put that flame out as it is just beginning, right? Again, the Page of Wands is youthful energy. It is new beginnings, as well as with that fire energy, right? Do not let that flame burn out before it can even become something, right? Then we have the Ace of Cups here. The Ace of Cups is most of the time a self-care card for me, but what I'm going to interpret this as in this card, I'm being dropped it. So if you look, there's like wing imagery on the card, and the cup has grown wings. So what I'm interpreting this as is that you have achieved a state of emotional overflow, in the sense that you are able to, whenever like dirty water gets into your cup, you're very easily able to refill that cup with clean water from yourself emotionally. So like you're very good at self-cleansing. You might do a lot of like ritualistic kind of like like emotional stuff. You might be like very like consistent with your journaling, or very consistent with like meditation or like shadow work, any kinds of stuff like that you might resonate with. And because of that, you've built yourself a very stable foundation, drawing to the Ace of Cups and the Queen of Cups here. And that has provided a very stable basis for your future here. And that basis here is now ready to take off, right? It's ready to fly away, it's ready to grow, it's ready to take you to new places, right? What advice do we have for this collective with this growth period? And I want to make it very, very clear right now, as I talk about these things, it is so very important that you resonate with the idea of moving to somewhere. And I don't mean physically moving. For some of you, it definitely can be those things. But you must resonate with being at a crossroads or being at a transition where you are ready for a change. You're ready for something new to take hold of your life that is positive and that is very emotionally fulfilling, very, very emotionally fulfilling here. With the Page of Wands, though, this card is going to be sort of this clarity on this apprehension with the Page of Wands, right? Because Wands is fiery energy, but Page is always this kind of like youthful, I don't know, should I, shouldn't I, right? And how I'm interpreting that is that you have so much energy and so much drive, especially with that Ace of Cups, Sun energy coming through. But there is perhaps even a part of you, perhaps even like your inner child, your younger self, that says, I am scared, I'm afraid to do that, right? And so I just want to pull like an advice card from this deck. I'm sure whatever is meant to come through will come through. It's time to release negativity. This is so interesting because I actually thought a Scorpio card was going to come out. How this deck works is we have full moon and new moon in all the signs. I did think it was going to be new moon in Scorpio, but this is interesting. It's time to release negativity. Yeah, so that is kind of clarifying what I was just talking about again, with that apprehension energy. I also want to draw to the sign of Scorpio. I love Scorpios. Shout out any Scorpios here. You guys might resonate with being Scorpio, but I'm a Scorpio Mercury, so I heavily love Scorpio energy. And Scorpio energy is a thinker. Scorpio energy is somebody that's not afraid to delve into the deeper aspects of life, and they don't really ever label anything as good or bad. They tend to just view everything as like an experience, right? And obviously we can have more negative and positive experiences, but there's less labeling when it comes to Scorpio because they feel things so deeply and so intensely. It's very hard for anything to reach the depth of Scorpio, like they're not easily bothered by somebody being like, oh, I don't like your outfit today. And it's like, well, okay, I don't really care. Okay, because I got bigger fish to fry. I got way more emotional depth than you can ever reach with your words, right? And all of this to say is that I think this resonates heavily with this collective. Again, like I was saying, like inner child, right, is that there is a depth so deep within you from childhood, from your childhood experiences, that it's hard for you to think outside of extremes, to think outside of like very much like, it's hard for you to identify with a life that is outside of extremes, right? So you might struggle with like living a softer life because you feel things so deeply, right? And with this energy that I'm receiving here is that this apprehension, I feel like because you have lived such large extremes throughout your life, like such high highs and such low lows, that this apprehension to begin something that could provide more of a baseline stableness comes from the idea that I can't have stability. I can't have stableness. That's not something that, you might have ever experienced. And so not only are you maybe afraid to, take this step in the trust of yourself, but also the trust of the universe that something can be stable and that something can be beneficial. And I want to read now from the book for this. I just flipped to new moon in Scorpio, which I literally said I thought was going to come. Let me see if there's anything on here that might resonate. Think of your situation as the phoenix that's rising from the ashes, as the birth, death, rebirth paradigm. That's what Scorpio energy is all about. Whatever you've been through, okay, this is the part. Whatever you've been through, there's a new start ahead. This will be deep and transforming. This card suggests that you know you are magical, and it's time to work your magic. Scorpio is the sign that likes to go deep into body and mind and spirit. When this card comes up, there's nothing superficial about what's coming your way. And that's interesting as well, because like I said, we might be trying to find that sort of like superficiality in whatever is coming, try to find what's wrong with it, try to find what's, you know, where's the rug going to be pulled out from under me. And it's like, this isn't that. Scorpio is very deep and very truthful energy here. Okay, but let's read the actual card here. So this is the card that we pulled. If you've been feeling paranoid and acting weird, take this card as a very direct message from the cosmos to stop it. Worrying yourself is pointless. It's time to release any negativity you have around the situation you're asking about. If someone has been unkind to you, perhaps it's time for you to release them. Full moon and Scorpio themselves are extremely intense. It's time for you to feel all your feelings. There could be some nastiness in the air when you pull this card. If that's the case, take it as a sign to move away from anything or anyone you feel is toxic. Use your magic. You have all you need inside you to bring about your desired result. It's time to move from living fearfully to living joyfully. That very much sums up this reading. That sums up the energy of the Six of Swords transitioning into the Sun card 100%. If you enjoyed today's reading, don't forget to subscribe and like the video, as it really helps me out over here on the channel. And don't forget to subscribe if you feel like you resonate as being a part of my collective. And I will see you in the next message. Goodbye for now.